Okay, I welcome you to my first lecture in macroeconomics. So today we are going to talk about the key definitions and the variables in macroeconomics. So what is macroeconomics about in general? I already told you a little bit about macroeconomics. So macroeconomics is about the overall economy, and it differentiates to microeconomics that in macroeconomics we are looking to all the households in the economy and all the corporations, and not just to individual households or to individual corporations. And then we study the interactions between the households, the corporations, the government, and the financial sector. And the central bank is a key player in the financial sector, and there will be exclusively at least one class where we talk about the central bank, in particular the European Central Bank. So a possible definition of macroeconomics is we study the structure of the aggregate economy. Aggregate means the overall economy. We sum up all the households, all the corporations, and then we study the relationships, the interaction of these blocks. And we study the impact of the central bank, monetary policy, and the government, fiscal policy, to the overall economy. Suppose the economy is in a recession. Then we ask the question, what can the government, what can the central bank do to bring the economy back on track? And we will learn different models and different approaches to bring the economy back on track if an economy is in a recession. So that is what is macroeconomics about. Key questions we are going to address. We will ask the question, what is determining the business cycle ups and downs? Yeah? We will study this, and that is called business cycle theory. It's more short run. We will also study why do grow some countries faster than others? Why do we have growth rates of around 10% in the past decade in China, and in Germany over the past decade just around 1.5 to 2%? So why are there these differences? And that is studied what we call in growth theory. Growth theory is looking to the long run growth performance of an economy. And it's different to business cycle theory. Business cycle is the fluctuations around this long run trend. We will also discuss what is determining the price level in a macroeconomy. And we will see that the central bank, monetary policy, is a key player on the determination of the price level. And, as I already said, we will study the impact of the government, fiscal policy, and central banking, so monetary policy, to the overall economy. And if we have all the tools, business cycle theory, growth theory, and if we have a profound understanding what is the impact of fiscal policy and monetary policy to the overall economy, then we are ready to also study and discuss recent crises, recent problems we faced. For instance, the European sovereign debt crisis, which has calmed down, but it's not over. Yeah? Currently we have, once again, this discussion with Greece going on. And we will study, and in particular, the root causes, not just from an overview perspective. We will really dig very deep to understand why has it happened, what went wrong. The same for the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009 that started with the housing bubble and the US subprime crisis in America, and then spread to the whole world and moved into this great recession in 2009. So to understand really the origins and the problems behind all these crises, and even crises which are older than that, we have first to look to the different economic, in particular macroeconomic theories and approaches. And if we have these tools in our hand, then we are ready to discuss on a founded level problems we are facing. What macroeconomists do? Well, there are different fields. There's theory and empirical work. And in general, we can say, well, usually you have to do both. We build a theory, and then we check whether the theory is good or not good by looking to data. There are different jobs macroeconomists are doing. So some, as me, as a professor, we are teaching and working in research. But most of the students, the economic students, well, they are later on working in businesses, in an economics department, in a finance department in a bank or in an international company, or in a research institute. And one job they have to do is, for instance, forecasting. They have to check and to forecast what is going on with the GDP in this country over the next year, in 2 years, what is going on with the exchange rate. They do forecasting about interest rates, forecasting about sales numbers, and so on. Anything the company is interested in, because they have to do investment decisions, and investment decisions are usually forward-looking. Yeah, you invest into the future, and therefore you have to know a little bit what can I expect in future. And for this we need these guys who are working in forecasting, and that is, I would say, a key job many of the economists do in praxis. What are jobs? Well, there are different types of jobs. I already mentioned a few possibilities. You can work in an international company, and there are economics department usually, or finance departments, in banks, obviously. But there are also research institutes. In Germany, we have several research institutes, for instance, IFO in Munich, or ZEW in Mannheim, or DIW in Berlin, and so on. There are several research institutes, and in all these institutes, there are economists working on different topics. Let me give you a brief note on forecasting, and in particular forecasting errors. So some people say, well, you are not really good in it, yeah? And this is true. But we have to keep in mind that forecasting in economics, and we are a social science, keep this in mind, is far more difficult than doing forecasting in other fields. Think about the weather forecast. The weather forecast is usually over the next 2 to 3 or maybe 5 days. But if you have to do the weather forecast for next year in April, I promise you it's not even better than the economic forecast for the next year. So we have a different forecasting horizon, and in economics the forecasting horizon is far longer than the forecasting horizon in other fields, for instance in meteorology. And that makes clear, the longer the forecasting horizon, the greater the error. The higher the uncertainty, and therefore economics forecasts are very difficult and sometimes not terribly good. There's another point that also explains why forecasts are sometimes so wrong in economics. Well, I already said, economics is a part of a social science. So we deal with human beings. And if I do a forecast of GDP, that means the overall performance of the economy, I have to take into account the behavior of every human being. If I want to do a perfect forecast, I have to really calculate what you are doing today, whether you buy the bottle of water or the new bag or a new car or not. And now you see immediately that is almost impossible to do, because I have to anticipate every decision of every human being. It's impossible to do. And therefore, forecasting in a social science like economics is far more difficult than in a natural science. Because in natural sciences we have also so-called natural laws, like the law of gravity. Yeah, there's a constant, and I can compute how much force do I need to through a ball or whatsoever, and where does it land, and so on. They are really constants. But when we deal with human beings and with a social science, well, there's a lot of stochastics, uncertainty, unpredictability. And that is another point why forecasting is far more difficult in economics than maybe in physics.